So what I realized, hey Mayim, was that what I realized on Shabbos, as I made it to shul for like the sixth aliyah, I didn't get there on time at all. But remotely, I was like, they must be reading now, so I'm receiving. These are all connected. But what I realized was, especially at this point of the year, as we're getting going in Bereshit, each parasha is jam packed. There's so much going on. There's so much happening, and there were so many huge things that we didn't even touch last week. That's obviously going to happen as we delve deeper. We're only going to delve into the theme that Rav Pinson is sharing with us. But I do think it's valuable to start with maybe like a very quick overview of what's going on in the story, just to like orient ourselves. And what we also might find is that by touching on some of the other things that happen, we're seeing that theme that we're going to focus on more strongly weave its way through. And maybe like a few others tie in to help us more deeply understand the theme that Rav Pinson's going to approach. So in future, I would love to think that I'll be organized and maybe have printed some things out, but um, but I didn't manage to today. So yeah, so just a quick overview of this week's parasha before we dive in. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. And I guess before we start, let's begin with like a little prayerful intention, as we like to do. Because, we're Jews and Judaism requires intention. And when we remember to set our intention, as we said last week, I think, our intention is our kavanah. We're setting ourselves in a kivun. Those two words are connected. And I think it enables us to really be better prepared, be better informed, and it allows us to really have a greater awareness as we're seeing whatever our intention was unfold, right? Because we're just putting more attention on something, and I'm learning more and more like this is the key. This is what we're being asked to do. Pay attention. Where is your attention? And our attention nowadays is being pulled in so many different ways with such a force and such a sense of urgency and importance. And when we say like, what would happen if we just didn't X, Y, or Z? And we would probably have more attention to really spend on like put on the things that are important and valuable. So let's set our intention. So I invite you all to get comfy. Do it in the form of a very short meditation. Let's just take 3 deep inhales and exhales as we really just let our whole body and system settle into the space. Very powerful posture to be in this month. We mentioned it last week, is left hand and then right hand on the heart. And I want to start with a prayer. First of all, thank you, Hashem, the source, all love, life, light, our life force, our life source. Thank you for bringing us all here together. Thank you for the Torah that has so much guidance and blessing and information for us. Please bless us on this journey that we should be open to receive. Each of us should receive exactly what we need to move through this week in the most awake way, the highest way, feeling aligned, connected in faith and trust, with hope and joy. that we should sense the koach, the energy, the force of being connected to one another, of being connected to you, of being connected to Torah. And we should be aware of the new light, the new wisdom, the blessing, past, present, future that's present in our lives. And we should feel that sense of being held and guided. And through our efforts, through our actions, through our thoughts, through our speech, we should really open the gateways for all of the women of Israel to connect to themselves and to you and to each other in a deeper, more profound, more meaningful, more joyous way that should enable the light of Geula to be revealed. And we should bring that in, down, out for all of humanity. Amen. Amen. Okay, when you're ready, you can come back into your space. Okay, so as we said at the beginning, let's start with like a really short summary of what happens in the Torah, just so that we can meet the material, even if it's quickly. I'm going to check my notes because it's so jam-packed. I don't want to miss anything. All right, so Parshat Vayeshev. We're still in the first book of Moses. We've got 5 books. Does anyone know what number Parsha this is? Because I didn't count. Whoever knows can either share or write it in the notes afterwards. Is it? I was going to say it must have. I wonder if it's got some kind of connection to this concept of like gestation and revelation. Is it 9 or 10? We can make a hold of our Torah over both of those numbers, but 8, 10. I'm gonna listen to our Borough Park Talmida Chachama here. All right, so maybe we're on the 10th one, which is beautiful. Also, I know, I just don't want to like.
Yeah, anyways, go.
Anyway, it's not hugely important at this point, but I'm sure in and of itself, of course, it's important. Okay, so the Parsha opens with Yaakov. He's finally left the house of Lavan. He's finally arrived in Eretz Israel, and he's really hopeful and ready and willing to live in peace. It's the 9th. Okay, there we go. But then we find out that actually, not only is he not going to get to like settle and live in peace, but he's about to. It's fine. Come in. I'm just giving a summary of the Parsha. So not only is he not going to live in peace, he's actually about to confront his biggest challenge yet, the most devastating one that I'm sure all of our hearts break every time we meet this part of the Parsha. And then, family tension erupts. Like Yosef, clearly favored. He's like the son of his old age, but really we understand, and we're going to go into this much deeper, is that Yosef is like the expression of Yaakov's inner spiritual self. He's his legacy. And also he's the firstborn of Rachel. So he's super loved, and obviously jealousy, like the brothers get jealous, as one would understand and expect. And then we have the story of him sharing his dreams, and that makes them resent him even more. And then he goes out to look for his brothers sent by Yaakov, and they're like, hey, and we all know the story. He gets sold. Pause story. Then we have this parallel story about Yehuda and Tamar, which essentially is the beginning of the messianic line. So in this parsha, we have like Yosef, Mashiach ben Yosef, and Mashiach ben David, because the children that come from that union of Tamar and Yehuda, that's like all in cloaked secrecy, but really ends up, she ends up being seen as a really righteous person rather than someone who's tricked. We won't go into all the details. Then we return to the story and we hear about Yosef. He's had the time in the pit. He's been taken to Egypt. He gets tempted by Potiphar. He resists that temptation, and then he ends up she lies and he gets sent to prison, and he's in another, enclosed, constricted space. And then he has the dreams again, and these dreams come true. And then does he get out in this parsha? I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether he's actually just left waiting. And so, yeah, he's left waiting. Yeah, it's very early in the weeks. Yeah, can be forgiven. But
I think he's in a pit for a while before.
He spends a lot of time in the pit, and then he goes down to Egypt, and then he's in jail in Egypt. And he's there for he thinks he's going to get out, but then he's there for extra long. There's a lot of waiting.
He's like in the jail or the pit.
He's waiting, and so is Yaakov. And that is the theme that we're going to go much deeper into tonight. This idea of, Rav Dov Ber-Pinson calls it trustful waiting.
Vayeshev means to sit, right?
Vayeshev means, to settle. To settle. And so Yaakov, right, he comes to Eretz Yisrael and he's ready. He's finally going to get to settle. But no, of course not. Some huge traumatic tragedies on the way, which, please God, lo aleinu. But I think this is a theme that, we meet and we see other people meeting, where you think life's going to go one way and then it's not. And so we're going to explore this idea. We're going to look at it through the lens of Yaakov, not Yosef. Yosef is someone who does spend a lot of trustful waiting, but it's a different kind to Yaakov, because Yosef's trustful waiting is like filled with his vision and his dreams, and he's got clarity and emunah, that he knows where he's going, and he doesn't know how it's going to happen or what's going to happen at the end, but he trusts this is all part of God's plan, and he has a vision. Yaakov, on the other hand, we're told that he loses his vision, literally, but also we're told that the Shekhinah leaves him. He loses his Ruach HaKodesh.
But not for his whole life.
Of course not, just in this period of trustful waiting. And I believe it's 22 years. So this is like a really serious period of time that Yaakov is blinded by the pain of the grief of losing his beloved son.
Is there a reason why
something so heavy? Yeah, so there is this idea, and we'll go into it in a bit. I think we'll stop and read, but there's this idea that, I think it's the Midrash maybe, that it brings down that you can never get over a death that you don't know whether it's actually happened or not. There's no closure. And this is something that we were all, to some extent, living through these past years, but just this idea, hi gorgeous, that that his grief, his sense of pain was so intense that he lost his vision. He lost his ability to have a spiritual clarity. And
it's not just him. It's like, I think that the idea is that when you're in such a place of grief, that you lose Ruach HaKodesh. So,
of course, but we're talking 100%. And as we talked about in the opening last week, the fact that these characters have lived through these things, they have set these like energetic paradigms, and also these energy, but also like very tachlis. The fact that he lived through this means that we can also live through this and draw from his strength and his emunah, which is something that's going to come through really strongly. All right, so let's press pause and let's read. I'll start and then maybe we'll pass it around. Okay, so quoting from the Torah, this is Bereshit 37, 1-2. Vayeshev, and Yaakov settled in the land of his father's sojourns. These are the chronicles of Yaakov when Yosef was 17 years old. So Yaakov has been journeying for many years, having toiled and struggled throughout those years. He now expects to arrive at a place of peace and tranquility, the home of his father. He expects his experience of life to change from darkness to light, like from the cosmic tzimtzum, the withdrawal of light. to the subsequent revelation of light. So that sense of that constriction into that sense of expansiveness. There was evening, darkness, there was morning, light, day one. Indeed, ever since the Tzimtzum, all holy and positive narratives move from darkness to light and from tension to release and resolution. The universe is in transit from a world of effortful toil to the world to come, settledness and ease. We're all familiar with the concept of Tzimtzum, yeah? Right, okay. So Tzimtzum, we're talking about this time of creation when Hashem constricted himself in order to make a space within which a new light could come. And so Rav Pintz is saying that this dynamic from constricting to make space so that new light comes is constantly in play. Like this is the paradigm, I guess is the right way to say it, right? That we're constantly living through and that's constantly unfolding in our lives, from the meta, meaning the world, the cosmos's journey towards redemption, to the macro, to our own personal lives, even to the most physical of experiences, right? This is the 9th parsha. We have the 9 months of gestation. We can't see what's happening on the inside, but there's this process, right, of birth. Okay. So as Yaakov is now ripe of age and has lived a full life, he imagines that he can reap the rewards of his toil. After 30 plus years of journeying, he yearns to go home, literally and metaphorically. As Rashi says, Bikash Yaakov liyashev b'shalva. Yaakov wished to settle in peace. Yet at that very point, kafatz alav rogzo shel Yosef. The difficulty regarding Yosef sprang upon him. Okay, first we need to ask why a tzaddik, an illuminated, righteous person such as Yaakov, would wish to liyashev b'shalva. It's interesting to me that Torah doesn't use the word shalom. And we know, like, when we're talking about shalom, peace, we're talking about a sense of wholeness, right? The word shalom and shalem, shalom, peace, shalem, whole, is connected. And it doesn't use that. It uses shalva. Does anyone know the root of that?
Maybe it's tranquility.
Tranquility,
But I don't know
right.
if that's correct.
I think it's a much more accurate understanding. Yeah. It's that sense of like inner peace.
Shlomo has a song where that word is in it. And he explained it that there's different kinds of happiness.
Can you speak up a bit so that whoever's
There's different kinds of happiness. And this is the kind where there's the kind of happiness where I know I'm going to see you tonight and I'm going to learn words of Torah, and so I'm happy. But then somebody else that I loved pops in also that I was totally unexpected. So I think that's what he said shalva is.
Yeah, are you sure? Because I feel like that's one of the words for happiness. This is from peace. But yeah, it's okay.
I'm not positive.
Beautiful. Maybe we'll end.
Maybe
we'll end learning tonight with that song. You can lead us in it. That would be nice.
Are you learning that song tonight?
I didn't plan it, but it sounds like it's a nice,
it's beautiful.
a nice idea.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So, how can a tzaddik like even want to settle in peace? Surely he's conscious of the fact that, quote, quote, a human being is created to toil. And there's no question that he's dedicated to striving and to growing until his last breath. But it sounds as if he wishes to retire and settle into a state of reward. Rashi continues, when the righteous wish to live at ease, the Holy One, blessed is he, says to them, are not the tzaddikim by nature satisfied with what stood up for them in the world to come? How is it that one would wish to live at ease in this world too? I've always really disliked that. We don't go into it. But I think part of my challenge with that, well, first of all, it's my ego that gets in the way of like, oh, I deserve to live a life of peace. Why not? Right. But I think part of this trustful waiting we're going to see is that the ego needs to be humble here in order to really be able to unlock the deepest secrets that are unfolding when we allow ourselves to wait trustingly. And again, it's shalva, it's not shalom. We're not talking about a sense of wholeness and all right, work's done, I'm done here. No, for sure. It's I think we're thinking more of this sense of tranquility and perhaps inner peace and acceptance with life. So again, on the macrocosmic level, all movement is from darkness to light. From a broad perspective on our individual lives too, it can be seen that our overall trajectory is upwards towards the light. For it's clear that even descents are for the sake of the ultimate ascent. Right, we talked about this last week, that concept of like the crouch, it's really just preparing us for the elevation. And the lower the descent, the higher the ascent, which we see expressed really clearly when we move from Tisha B'Av to Tu B'Av. We have that journey in like a very visceral way, especially shown through history. Yet when viewed from within a narrative sense of time, our lives may sometimes seem to be devolving or slipping gradually into chronic habitual mistakes, weakness, or darkness. In any case, on a personal day-to-day level, moving from darkness to light is never inevitable. It's caused by our actions. If we consistently put in the effort to bring light and redemption, eventually it will come. Every action causes a reaction, for better or the opposite. Every thought and feeling we repeatedly entertain also creates ripples in our life and eventually in the world at large. And I think we started to touch this and we're building on it even more this week. Last week, we talked about how like malachim are these angels, these energetic messengers. And so we acknowledge that so too our thoughts and our speech and our deeds are also energetic messengers. And so nurturing a positive way of thinking and seeing and interacting with our life and the people in it is really, really valuable, very valuable. And it's also a very, very strong Kislev theme, right? That when we're able to think good and speak good and do good, well, then we'll see good. There's that Yiddish phrase, trach good, right? I don't know exactly. Trach good für sein good. Yeah. And that's really like where we were activating our bitachon. This is our inner sense of trust and knowing that the source of all good wants to do good, it will be good.
There's also this thing of like, you know, be careful what you daven for, what you pray for, because, you know, that he wanted shalva, like, which could be seen as like this whole feeling of not of bliss, but of, you know, what was the word that you used before? Tranquility. That there wasn't really tranquility amongst his children. Like that wasn't a real tranquility. So because he requested tranquility, so this is kind of what they had to go through in order to like really reach real tranquility.
Yeah, beautiful.
Like really be careful what you.
Yeah, it's really very profoundly true. I think what we're going to see unfold is that only through going and living through this experience did Yaakov and his sons were they able to reach that place of true brotherhood, true unity, and really create that foundation of Shema Yisrael, and that solid foundation of emunah that we draw from still today. Every time we say Shema Yisrael, we're echoing that sense of unity and brotherhood and legacy and commitment and heritage and all of it. And we wouldn't have necessarily got there without everything that's about to happen. So that's something that's going to come through more and more. So he continues. We're on page 109. And for those who want to follow, we sent a picture of the text in the group. You can look in it. So unfortunately, perhaps the payoffs or consequences of our actions are felt only much later on. Some effects of our thoughts, words, and actions may only be felt in an afterlife or a subsequent incarnation. My ego is very disappointed with that sentence. The Zohar explains at the beginning of this week's Torah reading that in a world of pure din, judgment, every action has an immediate reaction. If a person steals with his hand, for example, in a world of din, his hand would instantaneously cease to function or exist. However, our world is a world of compassion. Here we are granted a waiting period between action and reaction. And in this space, we have a chance to rectify our actions and reverse their effects, which I think is really beautiful. Because we're coming across this term of space, right? And it's in that space between the doing and the seeing the results that we're, as human beings, able to like really process like what we have or haven't done and try and, you know, make a different choice next time. And just thank God we have that compassion built into the spiritual makeup of our universe. So Yaakov desired to sit in shalva, which he calls rest, and observe the fruits of his efforts to finally see the light, resolution, redemption, and peace that he had worked so hard to create. But instead, he experienced the tremendous hardship of believing that his beloved son Yosef had been killed. And thinking back to like what you said, Cara, you know, that he's worked so hard to create. He did work really hard, right? And he really made so much space for the bad behavior of the people around him. But when it came to like his own relationships with his wives and his children, like there's a little bit of like work to be done there, you know, like clearly favoring, you know, he's got all these sons and he gives one of them this like beautiful special coat, you know, or the conflict that was there between his wives. You know, I'm not judging Yaakov Avinu. I'm just learning from his example that I often want to just be like at the end of the thing that I'm working on without really admitting the pieces that I've like just tried to skip and jump over. Like I said, I don't know if we were recording like last week's learning, you know, it was so high, it was so good, it was so relevant, so meaningful. Did I apply it? No. You know, so there's so much space for our humanness, I think, when we see that in these great tzaddikim, you know. So when they talk about this, but like, surely the tzaddikim, like, these are the beginning, and like they're so human in their, you know, failures and the mistakes that they make. And so I think it just creates so much room for so much compassion for like our own misgivings, let's say, when we miss the mark. I like that bit.
And somehow it's in the mistakes, that's where it's all like, this is the story of Tamar, and this is where Mashiach comes from. This line, it's coming from Lot. It's like such like
right, Lot who slept with his daughter.
It's crazy.
I mean,
it's like, but you said it was hidden. You said it's coming in this cloak.
Yes.
And the whole thing is so. Someone would call it the book of mistakes, but that's the whole point of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
You know. You know, the rest is just extra.
For sure. And this concept of like, why did he lose his sight? Why did he lose his Ruach HaKodesh? Because the Shekhinah removed herself. So the Shekhinah, if we see it, is that light that like stands out, you know, shines out within creation. And that light had to move back and out the way, leaving a darkness that was so dark that it was an even higher inner light that then could become revealed. And so, as you say, right. So I guess, when we can really go into these difficult periods that were made to wait to see what's going to happen, it's this, can we open up into a place where we can then really just tune in or connect to that emunah in the darkness, that trusting that behind the scenes, Hashem is like weaving a plan that I'm not privy to right now, and I'm not meant to be privy to it right now. But I can connect that emunah that helps me be in this space with humility, dignity, patience, and trust. Let's keep going.
It doesn't one beat the other. Like if you're in that space, then you're no longer in the darkness.
I just don't think you can be in that space consistently.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
so I think it's
physically
more
and spiritually. It's
right.
like they were in the tunnels, like they were still in the tunnels, but when they were connected, like
right.
they felt light.
No.
But the truth is they were still in the tunnels.
Yeah.
So
right.
somehow we're holding both of those.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
And it's like and it's not really like an anchor, it's more like a buoy. I'm sure for them.
I speak to myself, like I know when I'm in grief and fear, there is darkness.
Yeah.
But when I move into the surrender and the trust, and then there is light.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if it's this dance.
Right. And it's exactly connected to Ruach HaKodesh in exactly that way. That it says that if when you're angry, also Ruach HaKodesh. Also, there was like the whole thing with the music, that when they were depressed, they would call in musicians, and that would help them to come to these.
The prophets
about that.
Yeah, right.
What's his name? Wrote that beautiful fiction.
Hannah Mason's husband, David Mason.
David Mason.
Check out David Mason's books. What's it called? I had the second one. I gave the first one. Anyway,
the second one was about
look it up online. He's got a gorgeous fiction book, and it's all about the prophets told through the eyes of the age of the prophecy. Maybe that's it. I do think that's it. David Mason, or maybe it's Dave Mason.
Dave Mason.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, Khani, I think you touch on like really like the essential work of how do we get to that place where we wait trustingly. It's like enabling, like allowing ourselves to experience the full remit of the pain and the darkness of what's happening, and at the same time expanding to like hold. So as you say, it's this dance, but this is the story of Yaakov, who on the tree of life, Yaakov is Tiferet. He's the third of the 6, 7 sfirot, the lower sfirot, the sfirot that are like express our, our emotions expressed, let's say. There's so many ways to describe them, but for ease. So we talked about last week, we have Chesed on the right hand side, Gevurah on the left. Chesed would be that place of like trust, love, compassion, light, and Gevurah, it's like the darkness, it's the no, it's the stop. And then Tiferet comes in, and that's that harmony, that beauty, and it's that very stable middle column through which, the light all comes together and then, gets flown through. And Yosef is Yesod. So Yosef is actually the expression of Tiferet, then into Malchut through and into this world. That further reaffirms this teaching that Yosef is the pnimiut. He's like the soul child of Yaakov, and that's why this experience is so profoundly painful, and why he loses his sight, and why he loses his Ruach HaKodesh, because that soul piece of him that's expressed through Yosef is gone, and he's led to believe it's dead, but he doesn't really know. And as we said earlier, like we can't move forward from a death that we're not certain is certain. So yeah, I'm wondering whether it's like bring in a little meditation now, or to keep going with the text. What do you think? We've only got like a few paragraphs. Let's keep going. Okay, so only many years later did Yaakov see the effects of his life of positive action. Yosef was still alive, and not only that, but he'd risen to become the demi-ruler of Egypt, in the position to save his family from famine and starvation. Thus, the last 17 years of Yaakov's life were tov, good, interesting to note that that's the letter Tet, which is the number 9, which is this parasha, and it's also the letter of Tevet, which we're gearing up for this next month. That's going to be super dark, but again, it's this hidden light, this Tet. So for 17 years, which is the gematria of Tov, he was able to see the light, the resolution, the redemption, and the reward of his actions. He lived in mamash, peace and tranquility, surrounded by his entire family who had reunited and overcome their conflicts. On a deeper level, he had the rare experience of deep, ongoing shalva, rest, peacefulness, and tranquility within this world of tribulation and restless movement. On the other hand, the state of Vayeshev b'shalva, settling in peace, that Yaakov desired, was not to retire and stop striving, aspiring, and living. Rather, he desired to live from a settled, peaceful state of stillness and wholeness, and nevertheless still strive for higher good on the behalf of his family and all of us throughout history. This is really interesting to me because in Cheshvan, which is the month that we've cut before Kislev, one of the main qualities that we're told and that we're facilitated in achieving is a sense of equanimity, like that sense of really just feeling really super grounded and balanced and not thrown either way by something good or something bad. And so it's really hard for me in Cheshvan. I didn't achieve it at all, but anyway. So from within the paradigm of reward, one may experience the uncertainties of life and even the pressures of toil. Yet, he will experience these without the normal accompanying sensations of anxiety and inner suffering. In fact, Yaakov opened the door to this higher way of living and possibility for all of us, his spiritual offspring. He made it possible for each of us on our own level to eventually live in a certain level of Geula Pratis, individual, personal, inner redemption and wholeness. Even as we experience difficulty, and even as we continue to strive to bring the Geula Klali, redemption for all humanity. And so I think this is really highlighting this movement and this ability to like really be in the darkness, but in that place, connect to that inner point of light that Yaakov Avinu first and foremost lives within us. And so it's there, present. But also the fact that he was able to enact this means that we can too. And so in that place, that's where we're able to do the trustful waiting, because we have first of all, the imprint within us, the access beyond us, and also the wisdom of the Torah that tells us a few very, very important things. We have a covenant, a brit, with the creator of the universe. This is unmovable, unshakable, and we trust that the entire process of creation and therefore our entire life is moving towards goodness. May it be revealed in sweet and beautiful ways.
Amen.
Yeah, and may we really, Sari D. Schneider teaches that, like, as we're approaching Geula will be a time when we grow through joy, not through suffering. And so, B'ezrat Hashem, we should be at that point already in humanity. Like, we don't need to suffer to grow anymore. I mean, look at us all. We're here. We're happy. We're learning. We're trying to grow. So we should see that more and more. Does anyone have anything to share around perhaps maybe how you've like experienced this in your life so far? Like maybe at a time of like that we've already lived through and seen the resolution, the redemption, anyone?
I'm still in the waiting stage.
Yeah. Okay. I think we probably all also are, in the face of whatever challenges we're all living through now. I think I'll share that for me, when I was like struggling to conceive a healthy baby, that felt like a very, very dark period, but it was really I totally lost myself at times throughout the process, but there were really times where I felt connected to this like archetypal story of our matriarchs, that like they all struggled to have children. And I really believed that it was going to happen. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I just knew eventually it will, and thank God now I'm living on the other end of that and experiencing the many gifts that I was able to like unlock and access then, which essentially was a much more alive connection with God and a much more meaningful connection with prayer, personal prayer, and also like to Helen. So that was for me. Anyone else?
We've had this like interesting like dynamic that played out when thinking about